Showing activity has dropped this week in Rutherford County. Is that seasonal due to the holiday weekend, or is that a sign of something else that's coming up? I'm John Turner. I'm the team lead of the Turner Victory team at Onward Real Estate, and we're going to discuss that and a few other things here on our weekly Murfreesboro report. So we appreciate you tuning in as we go over everything that's happening in Murfreesboro and Rutherford County as far as real estate goes. If you have not done so, please make sure you subscribe below and please leave us comments. All right, let's start out. We've got your three top things you need to know about the market this week, and then we will get into those in a little bit more detail along with some other information. Number one, as we talked about, showing activity this week has dropped. It's dropped by about 0.6 of a showing per listing. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually a pretty significant drop, and we will look at that here in a second, and I will show you what's going on. So that's the number one thing you need to know about real estate in Rutherford County this week. Number two, the relist rate. That's the rate of homes that go off the market and come back on for whatever reason. They didn't sell. They pulled it off to refresh the appearance. They pulled it off to change the price, whatever they did. But they pulled it off and put it back on the market. So the relist rate has actually grown, and it's really showing up in a couple of price points in particular. And we will get into that here in a second as well. The third thing that you need to know about the Rutherford County real estate market this week is that pending home sales continue to outperform last year. We'll look at it in a second, but I think it's either 6 or 7 straight weeks that we have been above what happened where we were last year. So let's go ahead and jump into our stats. And I hit the wrong thing there. Let's see what we can do. All right, let me close that out so I don't get confused here. All right, so the Turner Victory team market health score this week is a 51 for Rutherford County. That is just down slightly over what it was last week, but not a huge difference. We currently have 1,496 homes on the market. That's a 3.63 month supply. Whenever you break this down, pull this in a little bit. Remember, the light blue is the percentage of that category that's new construction. But 1,496 homes on the market, 36% of those are new construction. 126 new listings this week, not new construction, but new listings, and 125 went pending. So we actually pended almost as many as came on the market. And whenever you look over here at what expired this week, there were 70 expired, so or canceled, however you want to look at it, delisted. So whenever you look at that, that's a very interesting stat. So that certainly, whenever you pull that 70 off plus the 125 that pended, that's almost 200 homes compared to 126 that came on the market. The average or the month supply is 3.63 across all price points. Anything below 500,000 is in the green. Anything above it is, pretty much at 5 month supply or higher. 600 is just right below 5, but still you get the gist there. So let's look at what's actually happening, and these charts give us some historical data. Keep in mind that we are paying attention to the orange line for this year. So active inventory. We saw a drop 4 weeks ago and then it came back up, but now we've seen basically a level. I think it's just one unit off, so basically flat. But traditionally this time of year, we're still climbing some. So, or at least last year we did anyway. So this will be interesting to see how much this inventory gap tightens or expands from where we were this time last year. But as you notice back here early in the year, there was a lot bigger gap, and it has slowly come back into closer to play to what it was this time last year. Our month supply, that's showing up right here, just basically what we were talking about. We saw a gap here earlier in the year. Now our month supply is fairly close to what it was this time last year, 3.63 this year versus 3.33 last year. So that we're coming off a year where if you go back and look at the green versus, which is 2025 versus the blue, which is 2024, we saw a real gap this time of year, over a month gap between the 2 years. So this tightening up is interesting. Also, new listings. So we've talked about this. The orange line continues to underperform compared to the past 2 years. And especially if we just put it right here on last year. We are trailing, this spring anyway, we are trailing last year's numbers as far as new listings coming on the market. We're trailing by an average of 62 units per week. So that is, again, very interesting, especially whenever you put it up against the weekly pendings. And I always say this every week, there's a bunch of lines on here. It's kind of hard to tell what's going on. So let's pull 2023 and 2024 off. So we're comparing the orange line of this year versus the green line of last year. And for the past 6 weeks, we have outperformed as far as pendings go what we did last year. And earlier in the year, we did the same thing. We had a huge gap here in week 10 it is. So, but a pretty significant gap here. 101 last year, pending home sales, 125 this year. So we continue to pen more homes this year than we did last year. Now you couple that with what I'm just showing you about new listings, and that's been the theme all year. More pendings, less homes coming on the market. Our inventory has grown, but not nearly at the rate that we have seen it doing that over last year and the year before. So let's scroll down. I actually had some of these turned off and I forgot to turn them back off. But there was a couple other things I wanted to show you. Boy, we got charts for just about everything. So one thing is our market health score, and we really just been perfecting this year, so we don't pay attention a whole lot to the past few years. But you could see that it was up at 56, which was really favoring sellers. Not really favoring, but tending towards sellers. We even saw it trending towards buyers earlier, but right now it's pretty flat. Basically an even market, if that's what you want to call it. What I want to get into, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is we want to talk about our showings, because there was something that really jumped out at me, and that was this right here. Look at our showings. Huge drop right here. So we peaked out 4 weeks ago at 2.37, and then it went down to 2.28 and 2.13. And I mentioned last week, man, we really need to keep an eye on this. Well, this week, the average showings per listing is at 1.7 showings. Huge drop. And let's go to the different price points first, and then I've got a chart that I'll pull up for you. But different price points. If you're below 400,000, on average, you've seen 4.5 showings on your listing. In the 400,000s, you're at 1.73, and everything else is going to be below 1, right at 1 or below it until, believe it or not, above 1.5 million, you get into a little bit more there. I want to, if I can find it here, yes, bear with me. All right, this right here is really interesting. What we've done is we've taken 2023, 24, 25, and 26 and looked at the showings on week 18, on week 20, 21, and then we compared them. Now, I will say this before we get too far into this chart. The way that showings are handled by the realtors, there's been a trend going from one company to another, actually showing time over to Realtracs. So some of this data can be affected by that, especially since that's really started happening. We saw it over the past year and started switching all the data we're pulling from Realtracs, because Realtracs now has about 87% of the showing data. But with that said, interestingly enough, if you look at week 18, in 2023, there was about 4 showings per listing. You had 3.5, 3, and we were down below 2.5 here. So that's interesting. and you could kind of see how week 20 went, which is the week before Memorial Day. And we trended even. Well, last year it was even, but the other times it was down a little bit. And that's what we did this year. But then all of a sudden, we saw this huge drop. If you look at the other years, you didn't see near as much of a drop. In 2024, there was a 9.6% drop, but we just saw a 20% drop in showings. And I'm not really sure what to attribute that to right now. We know it's all holiday weekend, so I get that, but we are comparing holiday weekends to holiday weekends. As I record this, it's reported that there's a deal out there between the U.S. and Iran that may calm some things down in the Middle East, but we know that has been affecting what's going on. So I don't know if this is a lingering effect from there. It's really just hard to tell what to gather from this information right now, but it is something that I did want to point out to you because this is what we call a leading indicator. When we start seeing these showings and see them drop off, if they continue to drop, and we've got 3 weeks of drops right now, if they continue to drop, then it stands to reason that sales will be down over the next few months. So that's something that we really want to pay attention to. The other thing I want to point out here is the relist rate. This is the actual percentage of homes in a price point that have been relisted. If you look, the 500s, where 23% have been relisted, the 600s, where 31% have been relisted, and the 700s are where 28% have been relisted. These sellers are trying to find their foothold. They're trying to figure out what they need to do to get their house sold, because we go back over here. And if we look at what's going on, remember those same price points? The 500s, 5-month supply. 600s, almost 5-month supply. The 700s, you got over 6 months supply. So if you're trying to sell in those categories, you're trying to figure out what really needs to happen. And I can tell you, you need we talk about every week the 4 Ps. You need to present it correctly. You need to promote it correctly. You need to price it correctly and position it correctly. So definitely want to look into that and make sure you're doing that if you are a seller in those price points. Buyers, if you are in those price points, there's some opportunity here for you. So you definitely want to be looking at that, especially anything that's been on the market for over 90 days. The stats just show that there's a chance to pick up something at a decent price, not a steal, but a decent price. Want to look at the mortgage rates real quick. The 30-year mortgage, if you remember, we bottomed out at 5.98, but that was about the time everything went crazy in the Middle East. Mortgage rates have been fairly resilient. I mean, we've gone up, but we came back down, and right now we ended up this past week above 6.5 for the first time in quite some time. So I think we probably got where mortgage rates just could. I feel like the optimism was there and just trying to keep everything down as far as the bond market and all that. But I think this past week there was some fatigue. If we truly have a peace deal on the table and it works out, it's going to be very interesting to see what mortgage rates do and if they drop. And if they do drop, how quickly do they drop? We still are 0.3, almost 0.4 below what we were this time last year. So if you're a buyer, that's still good news for you. And speaking of that, if you look at the buyers that are coming out, this is the mortgage purchase index, and it's at 170 right now. This time last year, it was at 157. So that tells us that there's still a lot of buyers that are out there that are looking to purchase homes, and they are making an application. So a mixed bag this week. We're really going to be paying attention to showings. If those bounce back, traditionally we have seen a slight bounce back after Memorial Day. We'll see if we get a bounce back and how big of a bounce back. And then we're going to pay attention to what's going on with the whole Middle East thing, and do we have a peace deal? And if we do, how mortgage rates trend over this next week. I appreciate you tuning in. Again, I enjoy bringing this information to you every week, and we appreciate you tuning in every week. If you are not on our mailing list, go to our website, turnervictory.com. You can go in there and put your information in. We'll get you on our mailing list. But until next week, I hope you make it a great week. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and we will see you next week. Thank you.